Namaskar, doctors. I'm Dr. Deepesh Prajapati, exclusive pediatric dentist from Jaipur, Rajasthan. I'm running my exclusive pediatric practice in the city Jaipur since 2013 after I finished my MDS from Manipal. Today, I brought a topic in front of you with no authors, no years, no definitions, and no references. This is a topic which I have started working on since couple of years, or I would say started noticing things in my patients since couple of years, and I'm amazed that how these things are not taught during our PG days, well, usually not taught, and we do not apply such findings when we devise treatment plan for our patients, whether it is orthodontics or caries management. So at the beginning, I would like to thank God Almighty that He gave me chance to do my post graduation under Dr. Rashmi Naik, my guide and then HOD of the Department of Pediatric Dentistry at Manipal College of Dental Sciences. And whatever I am there today professionally is all because of her guidance and the effort she put in me to make me a better doctor. So thank you, ma'am. So I want to ask each one of you that just think that when was the last you checked your patient's tongue? I mean, yes, when we do a case history which is form based, there is a column about tongue. But forget when you move into practice and uh, and then you have to actually check that the teeth of the patient or the child comes with a complaint of crowding, and then you have to check devise a treatment plan for the patient, that how often you include tongue in your treatment plan. So this presentation is all about, I feel, giving importance to the tongue. Start thinking out of box. Start thinking that do I need to work on tongue as well, so that to practice a real preventive pediatric dentistry. So these are all regular cases of severe ECC in our practice, and caries, abscesses, and very young kid, as young as probably this kid is just around 2 years of age. So what do you see here? 2 years back, I was noticing the caries, the periapical abscess, which is there in relation to this incisor. But what I see now is the frenum. I mean, is this frenum might be an important factor in causing caries, and whenever you see a tied tongue kid, you often see a lowly attached labial frenum as well. So uh, is it possible that this kid cannot move its tongue, and the child and which is causing the caries as well, except beyond that, the food, the brushing part? Now these are just two twin sisters. They are now age around, this picture was taken, they are around 10. One of them is tongue tied, and can you make out from that face that who has a more restricted tongue? I'm sure you must have been reading about how to read faces, about with mouth breathers, what are adenoid faces and all those things. Now, what made a one girl having a longer face than the other? One is having a darker circles and all those things. So, one thing which is differentiates between these two sisters is one has a tighter tongue, or I would say a restricted tongue, and probably needs more work on her tongue. So probably this girl who is more long faced is a mouth breather, has a deeper dark circles, and there were other behavior issues also when which I noticed between the two twins. And the reason, one more difference which I thought in between these two was more restricted tongue in this twin sister. The common way we diagnose, uh, the common way basically pediatricians diagnose tongue tie is they ask the child to protrude the tongue and then check for this heart shape formation for the tongue tie. Now, with practice, with more and more reading, I believe that tongue tie is a functional diagnosis, not an anatomical diagnosis. You can't see the tongue and tell that this boy is tongue tied. You have to ask function related questions, and speech is just one of them. I mean, usually parents, pediatrician think about tongue tie is when the speech is delayed. But uh, I can share a questionnaire on the email which Dr. Richard Baxter follows, and I share with my patients. I tell them first you fill this questionnaire, realize that if there are any functional issues with the child, and then get back to me, and I'll tell you how I can help you with the tongue of this child and how that tongue is can be related to these functional issues. So protruding the child and asking the child to protrude the tongue and deciding whether a child is tongue tied or not, I don't think so. It is a good way to see whether the child is tongue tied or not. And plus, except teasing your friends, I don't think the tongue does any other function when you protrude it. So as I said, it's a functional diagnosis, and protruding the tongue has very little function. This was a case me and my orthodontist didn't agree upon. um, she was a adult patient. We do adult orthodontics as well in our clinic. So this was a adult patient who wanted to get braces done for it, for her protruding incisors. She also had an open bite. She consulted our orthodontist, and my orthodontist was ready to do the bonding for her. But after the first consultation, when the patient went back, I we discussed this case with my orthodontist, and I asked him that why do you feel that the teeth of her, why do you feel that teeth of hers are like that? She has an open bite. Her teeth are protruding out, both upper and lower incisors. She was very fat, and you can clearly see with the x-rays, and there is no visible airway on this lateral cephalogram as well. So I thought that retracting her incisors will even choke that fat tongue more. I mean, it's already a 6-foot tiger in a 3-foot cage, and even if you retract these incisors, this girl is gonna have even more breathing issues, sleep issues, with a lesser space for the tongue to be there inside the mouth. Plus, this if you even if you retract it, this patient is gonna be on lifelong retention. I told told the parent of that adult patient that if you decide to lose weight, we are ready to bond your teeth. But if you don't lose your weight, you don't make your tongue smaller, you don't increase your airway space, sorry, I don't think so that it will be a healthy option for you. And then we eventually didn't go for that bonding. However, my orthodontist didn't agree with this case. So I want you to start thinking about in these lines that why does the malocclusion is there at the first place. And if you are doing an orthodontic work which will require a lifelong retention, is it physiologic? Is it gonna hamper the future well-being of the patient? Talking about the tongue posture, where the tongue should normally lie. Now the tongue tip should normally touch the incisive papilla, which is just behind the maxillary incisors. If you see this boy closely, he is sleeping with his mouth open, and the tongue is lying behind his lower incisors, not upper. Now this tongue, mouth breathing and low lying tongue always go hand in hand, and that's why this child also has a gummy smile, because the tongue cannot support the maxilla, and the maxilla is rotating downward like that, and hence the child is having a gummy smile. So one gummy smile is one thing, should alert you. If any child is coming to you with a gummy smile, it should alert you for future things which you need to do to optimize his or her job. So as I said, the normal position of the tongue to be at rest is the tongue tip should be against the incisive papilla. We have started trying to train the tongue using this Coloplast patch as well. We place this patch over the incisive papilla, and knowingly or unknowingly the tongue always goes there and plays with that new thing in the mouth. So we are trying to train the tongue using this. We are also having a speech therapist in our team who knows the tongue best, I guess, and we also take their help for tongue training such kids. So remember, uh, the tongue tip at rest should be against the incisive papilla, which is behind the maxillary central incisors. So if your tongue tip is behind the maxillary central incisors, it will support the maxillary arch like anything, and the arch will be beautiful U-shape arch. I mean, it's very rare to see a primary dentition with these open spaces everywhere and a very good U-shape arch. I don't know whether the tongue, since I have started noticing tongues in my practice, I find that every second, let me say it, every two kids out of three have a restricted tongue movements. I don't know whether these restricted tongue movements kids have more cavities and they are reaching into my clinic, or I am over diagnosing it. I'm still working on it, but I want you guys, you people, you young doctors and the practitioners should to start at least palpating the lingual sulcus of each and every tongue, and you will start feeling the differences that how tight that tongue is. But you have to keep a close watch on growing kids as well, because the adenoid tonsil signs might increase with age, especially at the in the age group of, that's what ENT people tell, that it might happen that the adenoids come increases suddenly at the age 6 before regressing forever, and it might cause more breathing issues. Then the tongue goes low down, and then it doesn't support the maxillary arch enough, and then precisely looking a good U-shape maxillary arch in primary dentition becomes a V-shape arch. This patient actually came to me with complaint of trauma. I mean, again, a point to ponder and start observing in your practice. Does this anterior trauma case usually have higher overjet because of the arch has become a V-shape arch, and then they usually fall with no lip support and break their teeth? So these anterior trauma cases might be a future or present oral myofunctional therapy cases as well for you. One more thing you can start observing, and I'm noticing it, all these people who have substance abuse habitual, you know, whether it is excess drinking, tobacco, or any other substance abuse, they usually have crowding, they usually have crooked teeth. I mean, when did you remember in your internship doing scaling for an adult patient for tobacco stains and they having a perfectly fine class 1 dentition? I mean, very rare, very rare. I believe the people who do not place their tongue against the incisive papilla, they do not get that satisfaction at any age. So adults will restore to substance abuse, kids might restore to non-nutritive sucking or prolonged bottle feeding or pacifier use if they are not getting that satisfaction which they get after the tongue tip getting placed against the incisive papilla and soothing those nerve ends which are there in incisive papilla. So as I said, kids might do more nutritive sucking, and bottle feed is probably the one thing at the very beginning which starts wrong training of the tongue. I mean, mother's nipple and bottle nipple totally work differently. I'm not gonna go into this because every pediatric dentist knows about it. It's just that we should start reinforcing more with the young parents so that they can take a better informed decision to whether to introduce bottle or not, and if they have to introduce, to how long to this be given. Except causing more cavities and all, this also prepares a future ortho patient as well, because the tongue doesn't gets placed against the palate, it always stays down low, and it gets trained to a low lying posture. Just a off slide between this topic, um, thing I want to share with young postgraduates is that start looking for a good mentor mentee relationship. your guide, or probably anybody with a regular IQ like me cannot master all the super specialties of pediatric dentistry. Let it be lasers, let it be cleft lip palate, let it be mixed dentition orthodontics, let it be sedative dentistry. I mean, each one of us has chosen a super specialty and started working on it out of interest, and it's very difficult to master, I would say, even one super specialty of pediatric dentistry in one life. So you need to find mentors in different branches and have a good healthy mentor-mentee relationship with them. Keep observing that who is doing good in which super specialization of pediatric dentistry, so that you have a good guidance force when you have such patients, and if you decide to go into a particular super specialty post your post graduation in your practice. So a good mentor is very necessary for your professional growth, and I'm blessed to have around 7 to 8 such people who are there to help me whenever I need them. So I touched this topic before, tongue as a tooth cleaner. See, tongue can clean your teeth. If some cookie gets stuck between your buccal side of your upper molar, you can move your tongue and clean it like this. Let it be incisors or difficult areas. Tongue acts as a natural cleaner of your at least smooth surface of your teeth. Even the occlusal surface, it can remove a large chunk. Guess what is happening with the kids or adults who don't have a flexible tongue? Can this cause more cavities to such kids? Think over it. See, this kid can't even touch her labial incisors, the labial surface or upper incisors, and no doubt she has cavities. I'm not saying that this tongue is the only factor which is causing cavities. We all know dental care is a multifactorial thing. I just want you to consider tongue as one of those factors which might be causing cavities. Many patients come to us with complaint of white coated tongue as well. Do you feel that if the tongue is resting against the palate and getting rubbed regularly like that, it will still have a white coating? I feel if it is not candidiasis or other opportunistic infections and still the child has a white coated tongue for long, check its posture where the tongue is being put at rest in the mouth. This I have already touched, that whether it should be a functional or anatomical diagnosis. My way to go ahead and recommend therapies and or release for a tongue is I give them a questionnaire, which is also followed by Dr. Richard Baxter it's given in his book Tongue Tied. I tell parents to go through it. We also have put this questionnaire in many regional languages also in the on the website finddentistforkids.com. You can go and check this questionnaire. So I send the link to the people and to parents, and I tell them to fill this, and this asks you about speech, about sleep, about diet, and about other things which can be related to a dysfunctional tongue. And then I ask parents, if you feel that there are few functions which are getting affected and few yes are there in that questionnaire, come back to me, I'll try helping you out. We are taught that serrated tongue is a sign of macroglossia. But could it be that actually the tongue is normal in size but the arch is constricted? The tongue is trying to expand the arch, but there is some other force which is not letting the arch to get expanded, probably the muscles which are there on the buccal side of the teeth, and the tongue is really fighting for, again I would say, a 6-foot tiger is fighting for its space in a 3-foot cage. So think over it. This is one thing which I've noticed is in in kids, that those who have a restricted tongue, or let me say tight tongue, when you palpate the lingual sulcus, they are also tight in nature. I mean, they cry easily. Very young kids, they always want to be in lap of their parents. They don't prefer putting on the floor and playing. And I have come to terms that a tongue tied kid will not be the best cooperative kid even under nitrous oxide. So now, since maybe a year or so, I have accepted this, that this child has a restricted tongue, and I do not expect a huge amount of cooperation while doing the dental work. They also are fine when you treat the upper arch, but they will not let you touch the lower tooth, especially when you want to retract that tongue. That tongue is so sensitive, or I would say tight, that even if you want to put a suction or mouth mirror to retract it, it's not a comfortable thing for you. And if you can't retract the tongue, we all know how difficult it is to treat the lower teeth. Now there is something called as posterior tongue as well. Few people classify it as anterior and posterior tongue. However, posterior tongue philosophy is not very much acceptable, but once you go and read more about it, where you can't see the frenum and still the tongue is tight, few people consider as a tongue tie, and then you have to do a more aggressive release for these tongues. But there's, I mean, not great level of evidence proving about existence of posterior tongue tie, but yes, something which you need to read more, see more, and then decide. This is something very peculiar I have seen in kids. I have seen few kids who are tongue tied but not mouth breathers. The only oral dysfunction they have is only tongue tied, but they have a no, non-familial, I mean nobody in the family has, but they have a big dark circles, the sunken eyes are there. This is something which, if you come across and if you find out that why does this happens, remember, no family history, child is not a mouth breather, sleeps and rests with lips sealed, but still has a tongue tie and sunken eyes. So one thing you can research more about it. As I said, mouth breathing and low tongue posture always go hand in hand. If you put tongue against your palate and try breathing with your mouth open, it will not be possible if you are placing the tongue at the right place at rest. Your, your mouth will be totally sealed for mouth breathing. So mouth breathers very often have a low tongue posture. Not necessarily because of frenum, but out of habit as well. So few suggested readings to end my lecture. Tongue Tied by Dr. Richard Baxter, 6 Foot Tiger, 3 Foot Cage by Dr. Felix, and Shut Your Mouth and Save Your Life by Dr. George Catlin. I mean, this Shut Your Mouth and Save Your Life was written around 150 years ago in 1800 or something. And when I was reading through this book, I was amazed that people are noticing this since over 150 years, but still we as orthodontists or our orthodontic colleagues are fighting with retention and relapses. Nobody is working is on the real things, that why people get crooked teeth. What is the epigenetics behind the malocclusion? So to end the lecture, this is my small family. These are my two passions, cricket and pediatric dentistry, which keeps me going. And these are my contact details. I have a YouTube channel. Please go search Dr. Dipesh Prajapati on YouTube. You will get my more lectures, more videos, demonstrations for patient and young dentist education. This is my email ID. Those who want to, feel free to contact me. Let's keep learning from each other. Thank you.